A Chameleon build compendium. It's about damn time. Right, for this one I will be skipping the math because there's a fair few builds and I'm pretty sure I still have more to actually go through, so there's very potentially going to be a part 2, which is going to be hopefully entertaining and fun. Right, just to get out of the way, I tested all of these in-game as well as mathematically. However, just to save myself in time on recording, because just honestly I've just been having way too much fun playing Monster Hunter Wilds, so I just jumped in, tested what I needed to test, put one build on, which is this build. 4-piece strikers, a chest chest with glass cannon, Palisade Steelworks backpack utilising unstoppable force. As you can hopefully see, there are all the rolls. Palisade plus gunner specialisation is 20% armour on kill. This is actually surprisingly survivable, even with something like glass cannon into the mix, and you can run around and do crazy stuff. This is less reliant on overall stacking of strikers, however it is going to be reliant on strikers working in tandem with unstoppable force. So you do need to play aggressive. Yes, it is just another strikers build, and although Chameleon's talent is going to be a very powerful part of this build, it is not wholly reliant on it, as even without it, you're only really dropping 3% from other ARs that aren't utilising a damage talent. Ends up being about 25% if they are utilising a damage talent. And by damage talent, I mean specifically killer. Up next, we have 3-piece Umbra, 2-piece Brazos utilising Picaro's holster, and NinjaBike backpack. Although this build is initially very weak, once you actually have the rate of fire and the crit buff from Umbra, being in cover, building up the stacks, diving out of cover, if you do that in tandem with utilising the Chameleon buff, so get into cover, build up the buff. Once you've got your buff on Chameleon, get out of cover and go nuts. 75 round mag with like a silly level of RPM. You do some pretty good damage and you can clear house pretty quick. Once you start to take enough damage, dive back into cover, get the heal. It's a bit of a weird rodeo and it is finicky, and I personally find Umbra just outright annoying to deal with. However, I did find this to have limited success, especially running around in the open world. It was kind of fun, it was kind of entertaining, and due to the healing rate you're able to get, bits like what you're seeing on screen now end up being quite easy, because as long as you do cover to cover, you heal through transitions and end up being just a little bit of fun. Now for a high-end build, I wouldn't recommend using this outside of solo, but we again have NinjaBike backpack, 2-piece Overlord utilising 1-piece Foxes, which gives us an accuracy buff, which in terms of utility on Chameleon is the way I would go. Contractors, which again 2-piece gives us another 15% handling. Picaros for the skill tier. Providence is going to give us headshot as well as crit chance, and then Walker and Harris are going to give us weapon damage as well as more damage to armor. If you really want, you can go for 2-piece Providence to get that critical hit damage, but I do find that having 2-piece Walker to actually be quite useful. This is a very, very comfortable build. It mostly solves a lot of the issues that Chameleon has with accuracy and range. And if you really do want to push Chameleon just that little bit further, you can obviously opt into using the Visionario, which is 50% optimal range on the mask itself, and then the 2-piece bonus, because we're using NinjaBike, is going to give us another 70% optimal range. And rounding off the last of our crazy NinjaBike builds, we have Picaro's holster, Fox's Prayer, NinjaBike backpack, and 3-piece strikers. I would actually recommend putting at least 1 or 2 more blues on this, simply just because where we're running the striker's chest, we're still going to be killing things pretty damn quick, especially if we have the Chameleon talent buff active, Adaptive Instincts. We're going to be killing things so quick that you're just not going to be building stacks. So put a few blues on, make it nice and comfortable for you. We can also run here a shield just for a little bit more comfort potentially, because we are running 2-piece Brazos essentially, which gives us the skill tier. With Fox's Prayer, we're going to be getting some damage to targets out of cover, as well as a 30% buff to our accuracy, which is nice. Like I said, add in some blues, put on Gunner for that 10% armor on kill, and then a shield, and you should be nice and comfy, run around and just basically faceplant everything with a Chameleon at full buff. You'll be good to go. Now for a full high-end build that completely mitigates all of the problems with Chameleon without utilizing NinjaBike backpack, we have this lovely monstrosity. By the way, for the chest talents, that don't have a talent showing, I would like to put in Glass Cannon. That's what I would run, but for you, maybe not. So if there isn't a chest talent showing, Glass Cannon or Obliterate, I would say Glass Cannon, but every time I promote Glass Cannon, people get upset, so I'm just going to leave it blank. Pick what you want. Anyway, 2-piece Overlord from the chest, as well as Fox's Prayer, Contractor's Gloves, Fox's Contractors obviously, Picaros, just because we need at least one blue, which is going to help us build up stacks for Chameleon, as well as the fact that when Chameleon is stacked, it's going to mitigate that blue anyway, or the drop in red core. And then we've got Visionario for that optimal range. So we have a 30% increase in our accuracy, a 50% increase in our optimal range. We've got the duo powerhouse of Contractors and Foxes, and we've also got a Fenris backpack for a little bit more AR damage. Any crit stats that are missing will be basically filled in by Chameleon overall. And of course, with all of these builds, because of how Chameleon works, if you do want to put a few blues in, you can, but I wouldn't recommend going over 3, at least for most of these builds. There is one where I would recommend having at least 5, because that's just how the build works. A Ball Ache of a Heartbreaker build, 4-piece Heartbreaker, Cheska backpack with Vigilance, and then the Night Watcher chest for obviously getting that scanner pulse up. Now, because of how Chameleon works, you will be trying to get those headshots. So the scanner pulse is kind of a backup. Obviously, we're not going to be running the Link laser pointer, and this is basically just going to work the same way that any other Heartbreaker build works. Utilizing Heartbreaker, we're just not going to be having the amazingness that is going to be the linked laser pointer from the Technician tree. So we're going to be relying on getting the headshots as well as the Night Watcher to utilize the scanner pulse. Not really much else to say about this. This does technically end up being one of the most powerful Heartbreaker builds in the game. It's just annoying to use because you're trying to actively get headshots with a Chameleon. Have fun. It does work, it's just annoying. Speaking of annoying, again, 4-piece Heartbreaker, Cheska backpack with Bloodsucker, or Chest, whatever one, because we're running Cheska Grupo, but Bloodsucker and Intimidate. This actually ends up giving us like 150% bonus armor, which is insane. So add blues in if you want, just to be, I don't know, even crazier. But this basically works by activating either Heartbreaker or Bloodsucker to activate Intimidate, preferably trying to get both. We can run Scanner Pulse here, but essentially this is pure trying to get headshots, which is nuts. It does work. I did an entire video on this build specifically at one point. It was fun. It was engaging. It was mixing in a bunch of different mechanics that don't normally fit together, which does end up being annoying. So I wouldn't recommend running with it in a group. Although it has more than enough damage and survivability to do so, it is very much interferable essentially with other builds, and it just gets frustrating. Up next we have just another Strikers build, but with Cheska Chest and Obliterate, which I do recommend over Glass Cannon this time. We are also running Eagle's Grasp. Eagle's Grasp are great because of that 15% weapon handling, which is amazing, as well as an increase in our magazine size, which just helps Chameleon just a little bit more smoother in its stacking process. Although 15% weapon handling isn't the greatest thing ever, this is 15% to our accuracy, which helps Chameleon out just enough for it not to feel absolutely awful. And then of course swapping out Eagle's Grasp for Exodus Gloves, which puts Chameleon back in square one with it feeling a bit weird and wacky and inaccurate at range. However, with proper management, it does allow you to have essentially an infinite uptime on the Chameleon buff. However, if you can, just to help you out a little bit more with the Exodus build so that you can be a lot more aggressive, try and get yourself a Unicorn Palisade chest for red core, crit chance, crit damage, and then Obliterate. Finally, last on this list, we have 4-piece Foundry, Liquid Engineer for Perfect Bloodsucker, and then a Cheska chest with Intimidate. This, I've updated it from what it was previously. There wasn't Liquid Engineer back in the day, but this is the original Legendary AR build when Legendary first came out. We're going back years here. So I wanted to add it in because a lot of people were asking about it. This is like the OG Legendary speedrunning build. It's nowhere near as good as what we're able to do today, But if you are interested in just casually walking through a legendary, I did test it out a little bit. I might have to do a full video showcasing it, but it does seem to still work. I might have to recruit some DJ Tickle and some fellow DPS clan members to get it going. However, that is going to do it for this video. If you fancy testing out some of these builds as well, do let me know how you got along with them. In the meantime though, have fun, good luck, don't die. It's bad for the health.